The Betrayal and the Last Stand. The stars above Earth shimmered like tiny lanterns in the vast darkness of space. The planet, once a beacon of unity in the Galactic Alliance, now stood alone. Humanity had believed in their allies, trusted them, fought beside them in countless battles. But when the enemy came, the Alliance turned their backs. The Salveric were ruthless conquerors, an insectoid race with a hunger for destruction. Their fleet, black as the void, approached Earth without warning. Hundreds of warships, each armed with weapons powerful enough to tear cities apart, cast long shadows over the planet. The people of Earth sent desperate messages to their so-called allies. No response. The Galactic Alliance had abandoned them. In the United Earth Defense Command, UEDC, Supreme Commander Elias Graves stood before a large holographic display, watching the incoming enemy fleet. His jaw tightened. "They left us to die," he said, his voice cold with fury. General Hannah Carter, his second in command, slammed her fist against the metal table. "Cowards. We fought their wars. We bled for them. And now they pretend we don't exist." Elias took a deep breath. He could feel the weight of an entire planet on his shoulders. The Salveric were too powerful. Earth's fleet was small, outdated. The numbers didn't lie. This was a battle they couldn't win. But surrender was never an option. "Patch me through to every soldier, every pilot, every civilian who can hold a weapon," Elias ordered. A technician nodded and activated the planetary comms. Across Earth, his voice rang out. "This is Supreme Commander Graves. The enemy is at our doorstep. The Galactic Alliance has betrayed us. But we will not fall. We are human. We do not kneel. If they want our planet, they will have to fight for every inch of it. They think we are weak. Let's show them what fire and fury truly means." A roar erupted from every corner of Earth. The battle begins. The first wave of Salveric warships entered Earth's atmosphere, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Human anti-air defenses sprang to life. Missiles streaked through the sky, targeting the massive ships. Some found their marks, exploding against the hulls of the alien invaders. Others were shot down before impact. In space, Earth's fleet launched their attack. The UES Valkyrie, the last remaining human battleship, led a squadron of smaller strike fighters. The pilots knew they were outmatched, but they fought with every ounce of skill and courage they had. Lieutenant Jake Reynolds gritted his teeth as he maneuvered his fighter through a storm of enemy fire. His squadron was taking heavy losses. "Commander, we can't hold them off much longer." Elias stood in the war room, watching the battle unfold. His mind raced. They needed something, anything, to turn the tide. Then an idea formed. A desperate, reckless idea. "Activate Project Inferno," he commanded. General Carter's eyes widened. "Sir, those weapons are unstable. We never tested them in real combat." "We don't have a choice," Elias said. Deep in hidden military bunkers, engineers rushed to deploy Earth's last secret weapon, experimental plasma artillery, designed to burn through the toughest enemy armor. Massive cannons emerged from underground silos. Their barrels glowed a furious red. Fire, blazing energy ripped through the sky, striking the Salveric mothership. The colossal warship trembled as explosions tore through its core. A second blast followed, then a third. The Salveric, so sure of their victory, had never seen human firepower like this. For the first time, they hesitated. A dangerous hope. As the enemy fleet reeled from the unexpected counterattack, humanity pressed forward. Fighter jets weaved between alien warships, launching precise strikes at their weak points. On the ground, soldiers fought with everything they had, using old tanks, railguns, even modified civilian vehicles to push back the invading forces. The battle was chaos. Cities burned. The sky was filled with smoke and fire. But something incredible was happening. Humanity was not losing. Inside the Salveric command ship, Supreme Warlord Jathrax watched in disbelief. Impossible, he hissed. They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to fall. But Earth refused to fall. Back in the war room, Elias received a report from an intelligence officer. His face darkened. "Sir, we intercepted an enemy transmission. They aren't just here to conquer us. They plan to wipe out every last human." Silence filled the room. Elias clenched his fists. "Then we give them a war they will never forget." As the first battle raged on, one thing became clear: the fight for Earth was only beginning. And humanity, abandoned and betrayed, would answer with fire and fury. Fire and fury unleashed. The fires of war burned across Earth's skies, casting a crimson glow over shattered cities. Smoke billowed from the ruins of once thriving metropolises, but humanity refused to kneel. The Exalveric, expecting an easy conquest, found themselves in a nightmare they never anticipated. Commander Elias Graves stood in the underground war room, his gaze fixed on the holographic battlefield. Enemy warships swarmed above, but the destruction of the Exalveric mothership had sent shockwaves through their ranks. They were hesitating. Good. That hesitation meant an opportunity. "Status report," Elias barked. General Carter wiped the sweat from her forehead. "We lost 3 more cities, but resistance forces are holding strong in key locations. And, sir, the enemy is changing tactics. They're afraid." Elias smirked. The Exalveric had underestimated humanity's will to fight, but they still had the upper hand. Better technology, superior numbers. The battle was far from over. Then the war room screens flickered. A distorted image appeared, the Exalveric warlord, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "Humans," he sneered, his voice echoing with contempt. "Your defiance is meaningless. We have crushed species far greater than you. Surrender, and we may spare the few of you worthy of servitude." The war room fell silent. Every officer, every soldier, every technician stared at the screen, waiting. Elias stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Then he chuckled. It was a cold, sharp sound that sent shivers down spines. "Spare us?" he repeated. "You're not the first to underestimate us, and you won't live long enough to regret it." The enemy warlord hissed in rage, but before he could respond, Elias cut the transmission. He turned to General Carter. "Prepare the counterattack." Turning weakness into strength. Humanity didn't have the luxury of waiting. They needed to strike now, while the enemy was still reeling. Deep in hidden bunkers and military outposts, engineers worked tirelessly, modifying old weapons with stolen Exalveric technology. Earth's industrial centers, long ignored by the Alliance, were now humanity's greatest asset. Factories once used for commercial goods were repurposed into weapons foundries. 3D printers manufactured makeshift plasma rifles, while underground labs tested new energy shields. But humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was their ability to adapt. Across the war zones, human forces abandoned traditional strategies. They fought dirty, using guerrilla tactics, setting traps, striking from the shadows. Small strike teams infiltrated enemy camps, planting explosives in critical locations. Civilians, thought to be helpless, turned into saboteurs, cutting off enemy supply lines. The Exalveric were used to fighting predictable wars. This was something else entirely. A silent hunter strikes. In the cold void of space, a lone human warship drifted among the wreckage of battle. The UES Phantom, an experimental stealth frigate, had survived the initial assault by faking its destruction. Now it lurked in the shadows, waiting for its moment. Captain Adrian Cole sat in the dimly lit bridge, his crew tense but ready. "Their fleet is regrouping," his navigator reported. "We won't get another chance like this." Cole nodded. "Then we hit them where it hurts." The Phantom powered up its experimental weapon, a stolen Exalveric energy disruptor, reverse-engineered and modified. With a single pulse, the enemy's communications were thrown into chaos. For the first time, the Xalveric were blind. And that was when humanity struck. The moment everything changed. Back on Earth, as the Xalveric command structure faltered, human forces launched a devastating counteroffensive. Tanks rolled through the burning streets, railguns tore through alien armor, and soldiers moved with a fury that shook the ground. The enemy, once so certain of their victory, was now struggling to hold their ground. Their war cries turned to desperate commands. Their formations shattered. And then, something incredible happened. A Xalveric warship, badly damaged and out of options, turned and fled. The first retreat. In the war room, Elias Graves watched the enemy vessel vanish into the void. He exhaled slowly, his heart pounding. "They're running," General Carter whispered. Elias nodded. "Now we hunt them." The battle was far from over, but for the first time since the invasion began, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were winning. The rise of the Phantom War. The Xalveric had always fought wars of dominance, overwhelming firepower, planetary bombardments, crushing their enemies under superior technology. But this was something they had never encountered before. Humanity didn't fight for territory. They didn't fight for glory. They fought for survival, and that made them terrifying. Shadows in the void. The Xalveric Grand Admiral, Facaris, stood in the command chamber of the Oblivion Wraith, his largest battleship. It should have been a moment of triumph. Earth should have fallen. Instead, his fleet was in chaos. "Status report," Facaris growled, his mandibles twitching. A nervous officer bowed. "The humans have disrupted our command network, Supreme Admiral. Their guerrilla forces are attacking key supply chains, and we have lost contact with 6 warships." Facaris narrowed his 6 glowing eyes. Lost contact, or destroyed? The officer hesitated. We do not know." That was the problem. The humans weren't fighting the way the Xalveric expected. They weren't launching direct assaults against superior forces. They were striking from the darkness, slipping through defenses, vanishing before retaliation. They were ghosts. And the deadliest ghost of all was the UES Phantom. A fleet without a fleet. Deep in the shadows of space, Captain Adrian Cole watched the Xalveric fleet through his ship's advanced cloaking system. The Phantom wasn't the biggest warship. It wasn't the strongest. But it was invisible. "Target acquired," his weapons officer whispered. "Enemy resupply station. Light defenses, but critical for their fleet." Cole smirked. "Then let's see how they like fighting blind." A single, silent torpedo launched from the Phantom, vanishing into the darkness. Moments later, boom! The Xalveric station erupted in flames. Their fleet was powerful, but without supplies, without fuel. They would become stranded, vulnerable. A war of trickery. Meanwhile, on Earth, Elias Graves had started using a different kind of weapon: deception. Knowing that the Xalveric relied on advanced scanners, human engineers began using old, discarded ships as decoys. They rigged them with heat signatures and false energy readings, making it seem like a massive fleet was gathering beyond the moon. The enemy fell for it. Entire squadrons of Xalveric ships wasted their firepower on empty shells, chasing phantoms while real human strike teams infiltrated and sabotaged key positions. Elias watched from the underground war room, listening to intercepted enemy chatter. "They're confused," General Carter said with a grin. "They think we have a hidden fleet." Elias exhaled. "Let's make them believe it." Breaking the enemy's will. The Xalveric had never feared an enemy before, but now they hesitated before launching strikes. They second-guessed their own orders. For the first time in their history, they felt the sting of uncertainty. Then came the message, broadcasted on every Xalveric frequency. A human soldier, standing over the wreckage of a fallen warbeast, his armor scorched, his rifle still smoking. He looked directly into the enemy's eyes through the transmission. You should have finished us when you had the chance. The Exalveric officers watching the footage shivered, because they realized something terrible. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were evolving. And the real war had only just begun. When monsters learn fear, the Exalveric had always been the predators. For centuries, they crushed civilizations, leaving behind only ruins and legends. Their war fleets consumed entire star systems. Their enemies never stood a chance. But now, for the first time in their history, they were being hunted. The trap that changed the war. High above Earth, the remnants of the Exalveric fleet drifted in uneasy formation. Their once unbreakable lines were fraying. Ambush after ambush had left them vulnerable. Their warlords whispered of ghosts, of human soldiers that appeared from nowhere and vanished into the night. But Supreme Admiral Vacaris was no coward. He would not let his species fall to fear. "This ends now," he growled. He ordered a full-scale planetary sweep. No more hesitation, no more games. They would burn every last human resistance cell to the ground. It was a costly mistake, because humanity had been waiting for this. The Phantom Fleet strikes. As the Exalveric warships descended into Earth's atmosphere, human forces activated the greatest delusion of the war. Massive heat signatures flickered into existence across the moon's surface. Fake warships, designed to look like a hidden human fleet. Panic spread through the Exalveric ranks. "They have reinforcements." Impossible. The Alliance abandoned them. Then where did these ships come from? While the Exalveric hesitated, the UES Phantom and its stealth squadron struck like lightning. One by one, enemy battleships lost power, their reactors sabotaged. Exalveric officers screamed in confusion as their communications blacked out, their targeting systems scrambled. By the time they realized the fleet was an illusion, it was too late. Humanity had taken control of the battlefield. A reckoning on the ground. On the ruined streets of Earth, Elias Graves led a final brutal push. His soldiers didn't fight for conquest. They fought for their families, for their home, for every scar left by this war. The Exalveric ground forces, once so certain of their victory, now found themselves cut off and surrounded. Traps detonated in alleyways. Heavy railguns tore through their towering war machines. And then, a moment that no Exalveric would ever forget. A captured alien officer, wounded and desperate, was dragged before Elias. His mandibles quivered in rage and disbelief. "We are the masters of war," he hissed. "How? How are you doing this?" Elias crouched down, his voice cold. "You never studied us, did you?" he murmured. "You thought we were weak because we weren't the strongest. You thought we would break because we weren't the biggest." He leaned closer. "But you forgot something, alien. The only thing humanity does better than anyone else." The Exalveric officer gulped, fear flickering in his many eyes. Elias whispered the final words like a curse. "We adapt." The breaking point. The war was not over. But in that moment, everything changed. For the first time, the Exalveric faced an enemy that could not crush. An enemy that only grew stronger, smarter, deadlier with each battle. The Exalveric had started this war believing they would wipe humanity from existence. Now, they were beginning to understand a terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were winning. And the real nightmare for the Exalveric. Humans were just getting started. The fear of extinction. The Exalveric had never feared an enemy before. They had conquered 100 worlds, broken 1,000 species. War was their nature, their way of life. But now, war was turning against them. And for the first time in their existence, the Exalveric understood what it meant to be prey. The collapse begins. Supreme Admiral Vacaris watched in horror as his once invincible fleet crumbled. His warships, the pride of the Exalveric Empire, drifted helplessly through space, sabotaged, disabled, or worse, hijacked by human cyber warfare. His soldiers, the greatest warriors of his race, now cowered in the ruins of Earth, hunted like animals. It made no sense. They had studied human technology. It was primitive. Their numbers were limited. Their allies had abandoned them. So how were they winning? Vacarus clenched his claws. No, this was not possible. The Xalveric would not be broken. But then, a transmission flickered across his command screen. Not an attack. A message. From humans. A warning in the darkness. The screen lit up with the image of a human, Elias Graves. His armor was scared, his face shadowed. Behind him, wreckage burned. The remains of a Xalveric war beast twitched on the ground, its glowing blood pooling around his feet. Elias's voice was calm. Leave. Vacarus's mandibles tightened in fury. You dare. Elias continued. We gave you the chance to walk away. You didn't take it. Now. He tilted his head, his expression unreadable. Now, we're not fighting to survive anymore. The transmission zoomed out, revealing something that made Vacarus's blood run cold. A row of captured Xalveric weapons, reverse-engineered, modified, and now pointed at his fleet. Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. Now we're fighting to win. The screen went black. For the first time in his long military career, Supreme Admiral Vacarus felt it. Something alien, something unbearable. Doubt. The war turns bloody. The Xalveric had made a fatal mistake. They had given humanity time. Time to study their technology. Time to understand their weaknesses. Time to turn their own weapons against them. And now, human stealth teams infiltrated Xalveric warships, using their own energy cores to overload and self-destruct. Human engineers hacked their systems, rerouting supply chains to starve the invasion forces. Humanity was no longer defending. They were hunting. The last transmission. Across the galaxy, other alien species watched in stunned silence. They had abandoned humanity, believing Earth was doomed. Now, they saw something far more terrifying. They saw the Xalveric running. One last message was intercepted from the War Council of the Xalveric homeworld. A desperate, fearful voice whispered the unthinkable. We have awakened something we do not understand. Humanity must be stopped before it is too late. But it was already too late. Humanity had been abandoned, betrayed, hunted. Now they would never stop fighting. And the galaxy was finally starting to understand. They had not witnessed the end of humanity. They had witnessed its rebirth. The rise of humanity's wrath. The war had changed. It was no longer a battle for survival, no longer about defense. Humanity had been pushed too far, and when you push something beyond its breaking point, it evolves. Now, the Xalveric were not the hunters. They were the hunted, the silence before the storm. In deep space, the Xalveric homeworld stood in eerie silence. No war fleets patrolled the system. No planetary defenses stood ready. The high warlords gathered in their grand council chamber, their claws tapping against the cold metal table. The atmosphere was thick with tension. They had received the reports. They had seen the impossible. Humanity, a species they had once dismissed as insignificant, had cracked their encryption, hijacked their supply chains, and turned their own weapons against them. The warlords spoke in hushed, frantic whispers. What do we do? One rasped. We cannot let them reach our homeworld, another growled. We must strike first. Supreme Admiral Vacarus, once a towering figure of power, remained silent. His mandibles twitched. Because deep down, he knew the truth. The humans had already struck first. A sudden alert blared through the chamber. The warlords turned toward the massive display screen. A live transmission flickered on, and what they saw shattered them. The ghost fleet's return. The sky above their homeworld was burning. Dozens of ships, human ships, drifted into orbit, silent, dark, unreadable. The Xalveric defense network tried to scan them. Nothing. Their sensors could not detect them. Then, a voice echoed through the warlord's chamber. a voice that sent chills through every Exalveric spine. You left us with nothing. The image of Elias Graves appeared on their screens. He was standing on the bridge of the UES Revenant, Earth's first fully operational Exalveric hybrid warship, built from the very technology they had tried to use against humanity. His expression was cold, emotionless. You thought we would die in the dark. The camera panned out, showing the human fleet behind him. It wasn't just human ships. It was Exalveric warships, stolen and converted, painted in human colors, flying Earth's banner. The warlords gasped in horror. Humanity had not only survived, they had assimilated the enemy, the death of a homeworld. The Exalveric scrambled to respond. Their defense cannons roared to life. Fighters launched into space. The warlords barked orders, demanding an immediate counterattack. But humanity was always 10 steps ahead. The orbital defense grid failed. Their missile silos self-destructed. Their fleet command lost control of their own ships. And then the final horror struck. The humans had infected the Exalveric planetary AI, turning their own security systems against them. In seconds, Exalveric cities began shutting down. Power grids failed. Military outposts fell silent. The mighty empire that had once ruled the stars was collapsing from within. Elias's voice returned, his words cutting through the chaos. We are not conquerors, but we do not forget. You abandoned us. The screen flickered again, showing images of ruined human cities, of the billions lost in the invasion, of the carnage that Exalveric had inflicted on Earth. Elias's voice darkened. Now it is your turn. A lesson written in fire. The Exalveric warlords begged for mercy. Some tried to flee. Some tried to fight. None succeeded. Humanity did not destroy the Exalveric homeworld. They left it in ruin. The cities were reduced to rubble. The war fleets were dismantled. The empire was shattered, its legacy buried beneath the ashes. And then, just as humanity had once been abandoned, the Exalveric were left alone, helpless, defenseless, forgotten. Their nightmare had come full circle, because humanity never forgets. The legacy of fire, the war was over. The Exalveric, once feared across the stars, had fallen. But for humanity, victory did not bring celebration. It brought a question. What comes after revenge? Echoes of the fallen. The UES Revenant drifted in the ruins of the Exalveric homeworld. The once mighty empire lay in silence. Its cities crumbled, its fleets scattered. Elias Graves stood on the bridge, staring at the smoldering planet below. His crew remained quiet, waiting for his orders. A transmission crackled through the speakers. Admiral, the last of the Exalveric forces have surrendered. Elias closed his eyes. A war that had begun with betrayal, with desperation, had ended in total human dominance. The galaxy now knew the truth. Humanity does not break. Humanity endures. But as he looked at the ruined world below, a bitter thought gnawed at him. They had done what the Exalveric had done to Earth. They had made them suffer, and yet there was no satisfaction in it. The choice. A signal flashed on the screen. The crew tensed. It wasn't from the Exalveric. It was from the Galactic Council, the very same council that had abandoned Earth in its time of need. Elias gestured for the message to be played. A hologram flickered to life. A towering reptilian figure appeared, Chancellor Drenvok, leader of the council. His expression was unreadable, his scaled face motionless. Humanity, he began, his voice heavy. You have proven your strength. Elias folded his arms, waiting. The Chancellor continued. We once saw your kind as expendable, weak, but we were wrong. A long pause. Then, the words no one had expected. The Council offers you a seat among us. The bridge fell silent. Humanity, once cast aside, was now being invited to rule. Elias turned away from the hologram, looking out at the ruined planet below. He thought of Earth, of the lives lost, of the betrayal they had suffered. Could they trust the council? Did they even want a seat at their table? Or had humanity outgrown the need for their approval? A new dawn. Elias let out a slow breath. The council abandoned us when we needed them most, he said, his voice steady. They left us to die. He turned to his crew. And yet, here we stand. The officers nodded. Every human in the room understood. They had not just survived. They had changed the balance of the galaxy. And now, humanity would decide its own future. Elias turned back to the Chancellor's hologram, his decision made. He spoke only 4 words. We do not kneel. The transmission ended. Humanity's answer had been given. They were no longer the abandoned. They were no longer the forgotten. They were something else entirely. They were the future.